Welcome back to another episode of MBA Mike. On this episode, I'm going to interview Ryan Walter. Ryan fits the definition of a serial entrepreneur. He's had tech and social ventures in the US, and now he's doing his MBA in the UK. Ryan has a physics degree from Vanderbilt University in the US. Ryan also speaks software and blockchain code. So Ryan, did you want to start talking about your background so far? I know you've had quite a lot of experiences in different areas,
Sure.
but how would you describe your journey so far?
Yeah, so I was formally trained in physics at Vanderbilt University, as you mentioned. After that, I spent some time working on a few small independent projects. Traveled in Southeast Asia for 100 days, which was a great perspective broadener and also was a ton of fun. And ended up getting a job in a government contracting firm. I did engineering / project management type work, but actually on about the same week at least as I started that job, I co-founded a company called Compost Crew with two of my longtime best friends. And I basically worked as an engineering project manager for about 5 years at that government contractor and then Panasonic. While I was kind of side hustling and building Compost Crew up. One of my co-founders was running operations, so he was full-time in the company, making sure our customers were taken care of while I focused on growth. After 5 years, the company had grown to a place, we bootstrapped it, so it grew slow but steady. After 5 years, we got to a point where we could afford to pay both Brian and my salary if we did 3 days of route work ourselves. So Compost Crew was basically an environmental business that allowed people in the DC metro area, where I'm from, to recycle their food scraps. We provided a bin. The customers put their food scraps in there, anything that was compostable. We collected once a week. With our fleet of trucks, brought it to a farmer, then a composting facility that we didn't own, then built our own composting facility, recycled it into finished compost that basically fed the soil that then grew more food, so closing the food loop. And we would sell that compost back to our customers, farmers, nurseries in the area. So once I joined full time, the business actually did start growing a little bit faster. We started adding more commercial clients where the revenue numbers were higher. Profit was a little slimmer, but still healthy. And things were going pretty well, but there was definitely some challenges between my partner and I, a typical operations and growth mindset clashing a bit. So after a few years, we decided that the business was doing well and we were happy with it, but it was time for us to kind of separate. Definitely it felt that we were very intensely focused on the business. We thought of it as our baby, and so it did feel a little bit like a divorce. It was a tough process, but learned a lot, and ended up, at first I was going to buy Brian out. Then I kind of took a hard look at myself, which is a lot of how I decided to go to the next stage. I took a hard look at the business and realized while I love the social and environmental aspect of it, it was a brick and mortar logistics business. We had a fleet of trucks. 80% of our workforce were truck drivers. And it came with the challenges that really didn't suit me. And with my tech background, I kind of had the aha moment, why am I trudging along trying to build up this kind of slow, more traditional, older generation business when I feel like I can kind of play in the tech space, but still have a larger, still have that social impact, ideally in a much larger, hopefully global way. So we decided that instead of me buying Brian out, we were going to sell the company. And we were fortuitously approached by an individual that wanted to get into the composting space. He had made some money in the renewable energy space with solar mostly. And we went through some months of due diligence, ended up selling the business for a nice profit. We were very happy with the exit price. I stayed on for about 14 months to kind of help transition the business, as is common. Learned a lot from the person that came on board. And one of the things that was a huge takeaway was with regards to the guy that bought it had an MBA from Georgetown. And I saw that a lot of the problems that I had been struggling with, and banging my head against a wall for months, sometimes even years, driver retention was a big one. How we were developing effective marketing strategy in multiple channels were stuff that Ben was able to come in on board with and have a very clear strategy very quickly that ended up being pretty effective. So I saw the company grow, and I basically kind of, after I left Compass Crew, said the next business that I start and am successful in building to a certain critical mass, I don't want to have to sell it or bring on more sophisticated investors or management in order to take it to the full potential that I always knew Compass Crew could get to. And it's after 11 years of still running in DC. So I decided after leaving that I was going to teach myself to code. I'd taken some courses in the past, but I really hunkered down, got a certificate in CS from Stanford, worked on some of my own projects, about making sure I could build a full stack, a full MVP. They're not the most amazing cutting edge projects, but they are working, functioning, and actually I have some customers for some of the little projects that I've put together, paying customers. And I'm getting my MBA at this unbelievable school, Judge Business School, to get those skills that allow me to take the next business to the next level.
Yeah, and this isn't the only business that you've started. Not the only startup that you've had. You've had other startups. Are you comfortable talking about those?
Yeah. So also after leaving Compass Crew, I had this fear, which I don't probably is quite common, of thinking, am I going to do this again? It was very tough. My best friend and I was going to buy him out. Then I told him I'm not, and all this stuff. And so I had this fear: am I going to start another business? Turns out that wasn't really a problem. Within a few months, I had started Astrophy. Astrophy Solutions is a company that's basically it does a bunch of different things, but it's management consulting and management services for small to medium-sized businesses, the businesses that can't afford the MBBs of the world. I want to help other entrepreneurs like I was take their business to the next level, again, without selling it or bringing on experts that are super expensive. So we offer all these services to business, including investment. So we have an investor for the company, and that's our chief strategy officer, and puts us in a position where we can potentially, buy some or all of the business that we're working with, depending on the potential that we see in them and how things shake out. So that's Astrophy. Another business that I'm working on is a business called Pelham. It's in the blockchain space. That one was kind of a funny series of events, because basically one of my friends came up to us, and one of my friends from undergrad, we get together once a year. We were in Chicago, and he said, "Hey, I've been trading NFTs on NBA Top Shots," and he was like, "Things are going pretty well, but I'd like to de-risk a little bit and bring you guys in." He's a poker player. In the past, we had staked him to go to the World Series of Poker, and he's had a few successful outings there. No rings, but he's done okay. And so we immediately, one of my buddies, basically before Kirk had finished his sentence, had Venmo'd him a few grand, and we started trading. Kirk leading the way. And I'm sure anyone that is paying attention at all to digital assets knows that pretty much everyone did quite well last year, 2021. And so, yeah, we've kind of have the situation where we have generated a decent amount of capital, and we now are trying to deploy it to more robust, sustainable, long-term, durable businesses versus just trading. So we're actually in the phase of executing a few different business plans in that. One of which hopefully we'll be working on together. Yeah. And then lastly, and very excitingly, because it's probably the most in line with my passion of working on businesses that'll make the world a better place, is InvestEd. So it's super exciting for a number of reasons, not least of which our team, Brianna. So the team is 6 MBAs from the Judge. Brianna is our CEO. You talk about founder market fit. You couldn't do any better. She lived the the experience of the customers that we're trying to serve, the students. Invested is basically a platform that connects investors. You don't have to be a mega millionaire to be an investor. Anyone that has some discretionary money and wants to do good with it, $5 a month, as like a minimum starting point, can donate or invest in students that are high achieving and low income. So we're starting with the pilot in Harvard and Cambridge, where there's a surprising number of students that don't have all of their financial needs met. They have to keep multiple jobs. They're not able to travel home on the holidays. They have a crap laptop that makes it just more difficult to do the assignments and keep up to par with their other, amazing classmates. So we want to narrow that gap. And what's so exciting about that business, of course, is if we can kind of show that we have product market fit. Because it's software, because it's a platform, we can expand to what is actually a massive market opportunity. But also, like I always say, like any business I work on, I ideally want it to be a business that, if it is wildly successful, will make the world a better place. By my broad definition, I understand, but still, I think that's something that I always want to make sure is part of it, because life is too short to work on a business just to enrich yourself. Yeah. Those are the three that are really I'm focusing on.
Yeah. So that leads me on to something that I find interesting. You chose tech and social entrepreneurship as being the two areas of interest to you. Why those two areas specifically?
Well, tech because I'm good at it. I studied physics. I've always been good at it. It's always been something like, I love solving puzzles, so I love working on hard problems that pretty much have like a right answer. Like your code either works or it doesn't. There isn't the subjectivity of many other industries and specialities that I admire people that work on. But for me, I just like having that hard, like, this answer is right. Also, of course, there's so much potential to scale. With Amazon, AWS, and Google Cloud, you can basically spend nothing developing your MVP except your time, if you can code. And you can see if you get traction. If you get traction, your margin will be huge because the cost per user is going to be minuscule. And, if you have set up your model reasonably well, then you should be able to at least make enough money to cover your expenses. So it just has the potential to be very efficient, but also to expand globally. Like, I can build an app, the second it's online, anyone in the world can use it. So that's why tech. And for social, again, I feel that I'm very lucky that I'm going to be okay. I was born into a really, nice upper middle class family. I got all the best education. I am a white man. And I'm going to be okay, and I'm very grateful for all that luck that I was, born into. And so, on two sides, I first want to give back as much as I can, so that as many people as possible are in a position where they can, live their best life and reach their full potential. The second bit is because I was lucky that I, am in a place where I will be okay, regardless of, making mistakes or businesses failing or anything like that. I'm in the position where I can work on a business where my sole focus isn't economical. I honestly believe that more and more businesses have to think long term, because customers, the millennials, but also Gen Z, demands that businesses are mission driven. It's not all about the profit. So it kind of works in my favor. Like a compost crew, we would get amazing people for below market to work for us because they were passionate about working on the mission, which helped us and is never something I want to do in the long term. But when we were strapped for cash, it was great to get people that could help us grow and get to a place where we could pay, at market or above market. But the basic idea is, life is too short to build something that just enriches yourself. Because I'm going to be fine. I want to work on a business that ends up making the world a better place if it's successful. I would hate to start a business, make a bunch of money, and then look back and say, damn, people are suffering because of what I came up with.
Yeah. On that, there surely must be greater funding available, some more liquidity, but also greater user base potential, the potential customers that you could have in your business, all available in the US market. Why choose the UK market after that? Because I think we sort of have a different structure of society in the UK from what you have in the US. Was there a reason for choosing the UK?
Yeah, I mean, in full disclosure, I thought it would be a really fun adventure. My wife and I just love traveling. We love the idea of living in different places. We know the world is a big place and the US isn't the center of the universe. And so I thought it would be really fun. I thought it would be a great way to broaden my perspective. You know, the Judge MBA is so diverse. I think it's, 42 nationalities and 200 ish
More than the US universities, yeah, in terms of diversity.
It's so the US universities, some of them are bigger and they actually have more nationalities represented, but it's still 60-70% American. And so I'm sure I would find myself gravitating towards my American classmates, and I'm sure they'd be great. But to see people from all different corners of the globe, which over the course of time will be extremely beneficial. There's a lot of economies and a lot of potential. I also didn't think that I was excluding myself from U.S. funding or U.S. talent or U.S. customers by moving to the U.K. Again, why did I pick tech? Because I can have a VP of engineering in San Francisco just because I live in Cambridge. I can have our head of sales in Turkey. I can raise venture capital funds from San Francisco. Of course, these are theories to some degree. We'll see how well it works in practice. I'm sure all of us being in the exact same place does have its benefits. But to be fair, I really don't see that I'm losing out on any of those and that I'm benefiting from this great adventure. And of course, Cambridge is an amazing place full of talent, actually much lower cost talent than Silicon Valley talent, and arguably just as good. So yeah, I didn't think I was making much of a trade-off, to be honest.
Yeah. And how do you find time for all of these startups? I've had a startup in the past, I've had a few. In all of them, the problem was the same. There's not enough time to do everything, especially as a driver personality, someone who wants to get everything done. And I think you have a similar personality.
Yeah.
So how are you finding time to get everything done?
I've thought about this quite a bit because you've mentioned it before when we were chatting, and you're not the only one that asks. I think... So it's kind of a few different dimensions. Like you say, there's only so many hours in the day. There's also only so much energy that you have for that time. Frankly, that's a place, especially this last year, that I haven't been doing the best at of really making sure that those waking hours you are fully energized and able to do your best work for as many of those as possible. That's exercising. That's having good relationships. That's taking, frankly, time off to enjoy the finer things and then enjoy life, which is a big contradiction where I personally believe and have seen it, I've done it, you're working these crazy hours, can't think about anything but your business. It burns you out eventually. Yeah. I mean, there's exceptions to the rule like anything else, but for most people, it will burn you out, and ultimately no one wins in that case. So maximizing the energy and the time you have, eating healthy, exercising, time with loved ones. But it's also about prioritizing. So I kind of treat my at least my professional life like my own personal business. And I have a 30 plus year plan of obviously not super rigid specific goals insofar as how much can you know what's going to happen 30 years down the road, but I have ideas of general objectives I want to hit.
You want to move towards at least, yeah.
Yeah. And I then work backwards to figure out what my New Year's resolutions are, which I, very serious about. And then every month I go through and look over the next 3 months. What did I do this last month? Did I hit what I wanted to do? I reflect what I didn't do, what I, maybe, reprioritize a little bit. What am I supposed to be doing for the next 3 months? And then every week, every Friday, I go in, I look at my list of to-dos for the last week. I see what I did, what I didn't do. I put the list of what I'm going to do for the next week by the day, usually 1 or 2 big things per day. Okay. That's one thing that, running 30 miles is pretty hard in one day. But if you run 5 miles 6 days of the week, not I'm not endorsing working on the weekends, by the way, but the math is easier. It's much easier. So part of the idea is to break things down from a high-level strategic objectives down to tactics to achievable 1 or 2 things per day. It sounds simple and it's maybe even a bit cliche, but it has worked for me. I pick what business and what specific deliverable for that business I'm going to do on a given day. I make sure I get it done before I check out for the day, usually around 4 or 5. I'm not working into the evenings most days. And I get that done. And I move on. So all of this helps me to prioritize what I'm doing. And then the last thing, which maybe is a little self-effacing, but it's true. So I'm just going to say it. It's maybe my little trick is I'm a firm believer that you get 80% of the value from 20% of the work. I'm a firm believer that most things don't need to be perfect to be good enough to get where you need to go in entrepreneurship, in business, in life.
That's good to hear.
So that's a huge difference, right? Like 20% versus to gives you 80% of the value. So it's almost irrational to push much past that 20%. I'd say it's maybe more like 50 or 60% to be fair, but that's how I look at it. Like good enough is good enough for me. And again, for some stuff, you really that doesn't work, like negotiating the sale of your business and reviewing the agreement, or I don't know, your pitch deck for raising capital with an investor. But even then, if it's good enough, you go into the pitch with the less desirable investor. The feedback you get from that is going to be much more valuable than you sitting and trying to mull over it over and over again. You fail, you iterate, you fail, you iterate, but you just keep moving forward, putting one foot ahead of the other. And again, good enough is good enough. That's a big motto of mine.
Yeah. I'm going to have to still see your calendar because I completely agree with the 80-20 Pareto principle, which I also believe in. I also agree with the 30-year plan that you have. I have a 20-year plan, which I thought was absurdly long enough. You've gone up to 30 years when you're probably going to be 60 years old by that time. However, executing all of those activities and New Year's resolutions on a daily basis, I have found, as good as your thinking might be, is still quite challenging. So I still feel there's another trick that you have up your sleeve, which I don't know of, and maybe you haven't realized that yet. It might just be being with the right people at the right time.
Yeah. And so that's a great point. I think the last piece of that, at least that I'm aware of, is delegating. I brought up the analogy with running. So, running 30 miles yourself is hard in one day. Maybe in 5 or 6 days, it's manageable. Running 300 miles in a day yourself is basically impossible. I don't know anyone that could do that. But if you have a team of 5 or 6 runners that each take a piece of that, you could do it in a week. So this is the thing. To me, it's like if I work from when I wake up until when I go to sleep, I still won't be able to do as much as if I have a team of 2 other people that I can delegate to and work with. Not always delegating to. Sometimes I'm with peers, sometimes they're subordinates, sometimes I'm working with the superior. So the point is a team gives you the multiplier effect. And so all of these projects, I'm not alone. I have co-founders, I have employees, and it allows me to, basically do a lot. I don't have to do everything myself. The company is moving forward.